Retro Hangover is supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Tony G, Tom the Superhero, Studstill Smash the Milkman, Lucas from Game Over Hell, Mast Keaton, Ozzy Garcia, JC, Megan Caruso, Rick Firestone, Dave Jackson, Jenny E, Retro Overdrive, Soha, The Emperor, Storm Beagle, Matt aka Stormageddon, Van Fernal and B. Ross from Super Garbage Day, Jared Brayland, Randall Quiggle, Raging Demon, Keith Gasper, The Retro Vixen, Eric Guess, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands Podcast, Ash Event, Alan Bingham, Mike the Rep from Backbreaker Gaming, Ryan Player One, Alt, Gary Heather, Low5 Alex, Omi, Makeshift Money, Sega Boy 7, and Riskel. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated.
Open your ears and crack some beers. You are listening to the most recent episode of Retro Hangover.
Retro and classic gamers, welcome to the podcast where we watch, waiting, wantingly, worrying, wizards wave, wandering welcomes. This is Retro Hangover. I am your co-host, Chris Copeland, with special guest, st1ka, from the st1ka YouTube channel. And, as always, your host, Shane. No moaning dick
Holy crap.
Salter!
I am surprised that Wand did not make it into your alliteration somewhere in there.
You're right.
You know, with the wizards and all.
You're right. I missed opportunity. I see.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. And
know.
I see st1ka was taken aback.
Also, waifu.
Oh!
It was right there the whole time.
It's funny because I thought you were done with your intro, and then no, there was a second part to it, and I spoke in the middle of it.
I think that's perfect because I heard you like, holy crap! I'm like, yes.
That usually catches people off guard.
So we should be moving on with the show here, which is about Wizardry. Labyrinth of the Lost Souls is a very popular title, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to us talking about it. I know I am, actually. But we brought along what I consider in my YouTube research or just video game research, the expert on the Wizardry series in general, and that would be st1ka. st1ka, welcome to the main show. I know we've had you on King of Games and RH Growing Up Gaming, but welcome to the main one. Happy to have you here.
Glad to be here. As you said, I'm st1ka, better known as John Portugal.
John Portugal. I like it.
Although to be honest, I don't really consider myself that much of an expert on Wizardry. I'm just a guy who started making videos for it, mostly because no one did it. So I'm like, okay, I'll just do it myself, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of just how it happened.
Which in the Western Hemisphere makes you the expert.
That is true.
Because I really don't see anyone else making Wizardry videos all that often. So your stuff is informative, and I do enjoy it greatly. But Shane, are you ready to talk about what games we've been playing lately, as we want to do?
I mean, sure, yeah, it'll be a short discussion.
I guess so,
at least for me. But
let's do as tradition dictates, and let the guest go first and talk about what video games, or just games, I guess, in general, that we've been playing. So, Gons, what have you been playing?
Other than Labyrinth of Lost Souls for this episode, I was playing a different Wizardry game. So I've been playing two Wizardry games throughout these past 2 weeks or so. I was playing a Wizardry Variants Daphne, which I hate the name. It's the worst name in a video game I've ever heard. But it's right next to Infinite and Discovery. But it's basically a mobile game, but goddamn, is it a damn good mobile game. it feels like a really good PS2 RPG with some like mobile and gacha elements, which I don't really like, but they're not overt enough to ruin my enjoyment. It's a really good game. Other than that, I actually haven't been playing much. I've mostly been reading a Chinese Street Fighter 2 comic book, an illegal one actually, for the next video. So that's basically what I've been doing in my free time lately.
I've been seeing your posts on social media for the Street Fighter comic books. They're so weird in different countries. You do the one about
love
Mega
how
Man too.
weird they are.
Yes, they are so incredibly weird. It's always interesting to see those things.
I will argue this one is weirder than the Mega Man one. It's absolutely insane. Like, it steals from Dragon Ball Z, Saint Seiya, the Terminator 2, from Alien, X-Men, Marvel in general. It's just like it took everything that was popular from the late 80s and early 90s, and it just made it into it just threw a Street Fighter wrapping paper around it. And it is absolutely insane. It's also super violent, super gory, and there's a ton of sex in that comic. And the funny thing is that, like I said, it was illegal, then without Capcom's consent. But it was so popular that it was actually the best-selling graphic novel series in Street Fighter history, beating out the official manga, beating out like any other entry, official or not. And it was so popular, and Capcom couldn't stop them, that at one point they were just like, okay, you know what? Let's talk. Let's negotiate. We can't stop you, so let's negotiate. What can we do for you? And we can make some money off of you, basically.
Smart. Now they're going to be peddling Chun-Li smut officially.
Basically, yes. As far as I know, it's the only time a video game giant said, okay, we give up, you win, let's talk.
Capcom generally is a little bit smarter about that.
Can't beat them and join them, I guess.
Basically, yes.
They took the exact opposite approach of Nintendo with the whole like Mario porn, the Super Hornio Brothers, where they just bought that and buried it.
Yeah, it's because this was based in China, so they basically had no power over there, especially in the 90s. So they could do whatever they want. But like halfway through the run, they were already touting that they sold over 5 million copies. So they literally,
jeez,
they did not. It wasn't just successful; it was like more successful than every other Street Fighter publication combined. It's incredible. It's just insane.
Well, I look forward to seeing that video. Do you have a anticipated release date of that? Or are you still working on it?
I wanted to finish. I hope to finish it next week. I'm trying to make a mad dash for it, but truth be told, comic book videos are editing hell because there are so many panels, and then you got to animate each one individually. It just consumes a lot of time.
Okay. Well, looking forward to that. Should be out soon in relation to when this is released, and that should be fun. All right, Shane, you said you would be super short. What games have you been playing lately?
This one. Okay. That's I think that's pretty much it. You know, St1ka brings up Daphne again, and I played that for a while, and then I kind of dropped off of it because I hit this point where I felt like I just hit a wall as far as the difficulty goes, and kind of made me not want to keep playing. But I did enjoy it while I was playing it. I don't know. I might give it another shot. I don't know. I did really like it, and despite the fact that like it has the gotcha garbage in it, it is pretty mostly inoffensive, at least, you know, in relation to other gachapon games. So I don't know, I might give it another shot, but I'm actually, spoiler, I'm gonna keep playing this game after we're done talking about it. So that might be a mild spoiler for like the rest of the conversation, but you know, whatever.
Right.
But that's pretty much it, man. I got nothing else going on. I mean, in terms of video games, I got a lot of other shit going on, which is why I don't have a lot of video games going on. That's life. Yay. Life. What about you?
Oh, yeah, kind of similar. I've actually been able to get quite a bit of gaming in, I guess. Mostly because I had to really catch up and play a game for an appearance on another podcast. So stay tuned to Tales from the Backlog, because I will be talking about Dragon Quest V there. I had to like cram in 40 hours of gameplay, because if you watch our Sunday streams, one night I was going to continue to play Dragon Quest V for the Super Famicom because I was about mid-ish way through the game, and it just erased itself because I took it out of my analog, Super Analog NT, whatever it's called, the Super Nintendo analog system, and it just erased the save. And so I had to start all the way over and play the game start to finish for that podcast appearance. So I had to all cram that in with in the period of 1 week, which worked out because I was in between jobs at the time. So it was perfect for that 1 week. But other than that, other than this game, I played some Virtua Cop, and I'm so happy I have the Sega Stunner now, because I'm actually able to play Virtua Cop on a Sega Saturn the way it's meant to be played, which is great. Playing it with the controller is such shit, but we did it back then because that's all that most people had. Most people didn't have the Virtua Gun, so I had a blast with that. I had a really good time with it. I'd probably play more of it, but I have more games to play. It's never ending, but I had a great time with Virtua Cop. And of course, I recorded an episode about it for IO Saturnalia, so there's that. But yeah, it hasn't really been a lot because there's a lot of games. Oh, of course, I've slammed in some Persona 5 because, yeah, that's another one that's coming up. But that's me. Mostly all stuff for the show as usual. Sorry to disappoint anybody, but we are content making machines over here, so to speak. But Shane,
not the actual machines. Those are coming for us later.
No. We were talking about this before the show started. We definitely plan on seeing if we can make an episode where just me and Shane are.
Well, now you're going to spoil it.
Well, I'm not going to tell them which episode. It's going to be a surprise.
Okay.
It's going to be an episode where me
suspense.
Where the robots take over for me and Shane. We're going to see if anyone can tell. It'll be fun.
People already think my voice is AI, so I could easily get away with it.
You could. I mean, you could be an AI right now.
Well, what makes you think I'm not?
Yeah, exactly. Why does your URL say Chat GPT? Hey, Shane, why don't we get into today's episode, which is the game that all of us said we have been playing lately, which is
that's good.
Wizardry, Labyrinth of the Lost Souls, and get into a brief history.
As a show that has frequently discussed Final Fantasy, it was really only a matter of time before we explored a game series that played a pivotal role in its creation. Wizardry, released in 1981 by St1ka for the Apple II, was a groundbreaking first-person dungeon crawler RPG, drawing heavy inspiration from Dungeons & Dragons while introducing its own unique style and design. The game was a major success, selling 200,000 copies within its first 3 years and even surpassing Ultima, another foundational title in the genre. Notably, Wizardry found a particularly enthusiastic audience in Japan, where it was released for the PC-88 and PC-98 in late 1985. This Japanese release significantly influenced not just the direction of Final Fantasy, but also Dragon Quest and many other Japanese role-playing games of that era, helping to shape the design of Japanese high fantasy alongside D&D. While Wizardry flourished in Japan, with ports and sequels appearing on nearly every available console, its popularity in the West gradually declined. Wizardry 7, released in 1992, received positive critical attention, but it would be nearly a decade before the next mainline entry, Wizardry 8, appeared in 2001, 3 years after St1ka USA closed its doors, and just 2 years before St1ka ceased operations entirely in 2003. For Western audiences, it seemed as though Wizardry was destined to become a forgotten franchise. However, the series continued to thrive in Japan, where new mobile and PlayStation 2 titles were released exclusively for the region, keeping the brand alive even after the original developer and publisher had disappeared. Recognizing the need for a fresh approach, several Japanese teams launched the Wizardry Renaissance initiative in 2009, aiming to revitalize the brand. This effort resulted in 10 new games released between 2009 and 2016 across platforms such as the PlayStation 3, Nintendo DS, and PC. The focus of our discussion today, Wizardry Labyrinth of Lost Souls, was part of this revitalization project. Developed and published by Acquire, Wizardry Labyrinth of Lost Souls debuted in Japan on December 9th of 2009 via the PlayStation Network. It later received an international release, becoming the only Renaissance-branded title to launch outside of Japan. Xseed handled its Western publication, with North America receiving the game on June 1st, 2011, and Europe on December 7th, though only as a digital release. A physical edition was available exclusively in Japan and did not include additional language options. The game's reception was lukewarm, earning a Metacritic score of only 57, with critics primarily citing its challenging difficulty as a drawback. Despite this, Labyrinth of Lost Souls saw further releases, including a Japan-only Vita version in 2015 and a PC port in January of 2020. That brings us to the present, where our focus on Wizardry is admittedly centered on a single entry in a storied series. Nonetheless, it's been a fascinating look at a franchise that quietly shaped the RPG landscape both in the West and, even more so, in Japan. And that is your brief history of Wizardry Labyrinth of Lost Souls.
All right, thank you, Shane, for that brief history on Wizardry Labyrinth of Lost Souls and, Wizardry as a whole. st1ka, you might know the answer to this because I don't know it. Who owns the rights to Wizardry right now?
Now, that is a very good question. I actually don't know the name of the company who owns it right now, to be honest. It exchanged hands so many times now that it's kind of difficult to know. As far as I know, even the company who did the Wizardry Renaissance series isn't the one who currently owns it anymore. It just kept changing hands over and over. So at this point, I don't even know. It's something I kind of stopped following, to be honest.
Yeah, because I was looking up the developer for this. It said Acquire, but I was thinking, okay, so Acquire owns the rights now. And then I saw that the remake was Digital Eclipse, but but they don't own it?
They don't own it either. Nope.
Okay.
I can check. I can try to check, but no, it's not. Yeah, it's not them either. It's just a tangle of companies, mostly because although there were attempts to bring Wizardry back, a lot of them were kind of low budget projects. And let's be honest, although I like Labyrinth of Lost Souls, it was pretty low budget.
That's a way of saying that. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty low budget, and generally it felt like that's all Wizardry was going to be for a while. But I'm not sure who actually owns it. I do know that that Variants Daphne is published by a company called Dricom, which I've never heard of them. But I don't know if they actually own them or not, to be honest.
Was Dricom the company that worked with Nintendo for their mobile releases?
No idea. Maybe it might have been. Actually, I don't know. Like Fire Emblem Go or something?
Like the Mario Endless Runner.
Oh, maybe. I actually don't know. Actually, I have no idea.
Huh.
Well, I was doing some quick research here, and st1ka is 100% correct. It's an absolute mess. So according to the internet, currently, the Wizardry IP is split between two main entities. One is Dricom. They own the Wizardry trademark domestically and internationally, and they have the copyright to Wizardry 6, 7, 8, and Gold. They acquired them in 2020, and they're actively developing new Wizardry titles, apparently, including Daphne and Eternal Crypt, whatever that one is. And then Surtech apparently still owns or retains the copyrights to the first 5 Wizardry games, and then they license those out for remakes and re-releases. So that seems to be kind of where it's at.
So that's why you can't find 1 through 5 anywhere. Because if you go to Steam or GOG, you'll find 6 through 7 and even 8, but you can't find the original 5 anywhere.
Yeah, that's probably why. Yeah.
So they licensed out one for the recent remake.
The remake, yeah.
Yeah. That is a mess.
It is. and I know Dracom I'm pretty sure Dracom are fairly new owners of the Wizardry series. I'm pretty sure it changed hands before that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like at one point, even Atlas was making games for them.
Oh yeah, well Atlas makes games for everything.
Wizardry games, I mean.
Yeah.
It's difficult to know who it's like. I've tried tracing a history of who owned Wizardry over the years, and I gave up on it, to be honest.
Oh, this is gross. So I was reading the rest of it, and what this basically means, right? This arrangement means that most new projects under the IP have to either be developed directly by Dracom or involves license agreements with both them and Surtech to be able to actually do it, because Dracom has the trademark and then Surtech like owns the original game content. That's a nightmare.
That sounds like hell. Yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest.
That sounds like a miracle that Variant Daphne and the remake even came out.
Yeah, well.
Or that they actually came out as well as they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's get into our personal experiences here. I think from just the way that you told me you played this, 1ka, you're going to have more than myself and Shane do right off the bat in terms of what our personal history is with the game. So I'll just go first and say I played this for this episode. And the reason we're playing this one is I think I went directly to you, 1ka, and asked, which of the Wizardry games is the easiest to approach and get into? And you said that this was that one, and it had to be more than 10 years old. So that's
right.
That's why we have this one. That's why we're playing Labyrinth of Lost Souls. Shane, how about yourself?
Yeah, you would think, I guess, based on this like mythos I've somehow built around myself for the show, that this is like something I'm deeply involved in. Like I've just been into Ultima and Wizardry forever, and that's not at all true. I in theory, like on paper, it's definitely my thing. I never played any of these games back in the day because I didn't really necessarily have access to any of them. So I'm trying to think. I really don't think I've played a single Wizardry game truly, except for the mobile game, until this one. I've tried out some Ultima back in the day, but briefly. So yeah, no, for the most part, I mean, this is kind of my true entry into Wizardry, such as it is, which I think is also hilarious that this got knocked so hard by critics for its difficulty when it's like purposefully more accessible than the other Wizardry games.
Pretty much, yes. Like the game is difficult, but you can tell it's not unfair. It once you figure out the way it wants you to play the game, it becomes fairly accessible, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Although, well, I'll bring this up in the game mechanics, but there was something that I was not aware that happens in the background that I'm kind of mad about, but we'll save that for later.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I want to say on that there, 1ka.
It's also like difficult to recommend the older Wizardry games, especially the computer versions, because the UIs and the graphics, it can be difficult to get into. Like, not even the game itself, just moving around the game and run the menus. It can really become draining because they did not have good UI design for the early games.
Oh, they were still learning. No. I mean, they were defining.
Yeah, they're figuring it out as they go. Yeah,
pretty much.
I mean, like that's still, it kind of like blows people's minds when you say that even like Doom originally controlled with the arrow keys and the control button to shoot. Like, you know, that's crazy nowadays.
And it was pretty common. Like even the late Ultima games also had some pretty terrible UIs. Like you go play Ultima 7 or Ultima 8, those controls and those UIs, they were not good at all.
I haven't played Ultima, I don't think ever. I don't think I've played a single one. But I take it now I don't even want to approach it. You're scaring me with terrible UIs.
I usually recommend people Ultima Underworld, which is also a dungeon crawler, but it's easier to get into, and arguably I would say it's the best entry point for a newcomer because it doesn't overwhelm you. I guess it's the best way I can to describe it.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Ultima Underworld. That was a big blind spot for me. We had some people talk about that in COG 92, and they're pretty upset it didn't make it. I'm like, I've never even heard of this. And then I did some research and it was like, oh yeah, I guess this was a big game. I'm an idiot. But what are your personal experiences with Labyrinth of Lost Souls, St1ka? And I'm sure you could talk about your history with the rest of the series.
Oh, sure. So I was already familiar with the Wizardry series when Labyrinth of Lost Souls came out. I played on the PlayStation 3, which is like the original release in the West back in, I don't know, 2009. I think you said the years.
Yep.
A while ago. It was actually one of two releases of the Wizard-Renaissance that we got in the West. We got this one, but we actually also got a second one, which was the Wizardry MMO, which only lasted like a year or two and then it died. So you're technically correct in that it's the only one you can play today. But it was released alongside that one in the West, with the remaining Renaissance games staying in Japan, so they were never translated. When I played it, I found it interesting because it feels like, okay, the story is new, the world is new, the dungeons are new, but it basically feels like Wizardry 5 under a new coat of paint. Like, it controls like 5, it has the same spells, the same classes. It's pretty much mechanically, it's functionally the same, and it even uses the same enemy designs from the Super Nintendo remake of Wizardry 5. So it's basically like a sequel to 5 or a spin-off to 5, even though it's a fully original story, I guess.
Oh, that's interesting. That makes me actually want to pull out my PC Engine CD version of 5, even though I can't read it.
That's a good version, but if you want to play it in English, you can also check out the Super Nintendo version, which is in English, that one.
I'm going to lose my CD audio.
True. and it's really good CD audio, I might add.
Yes. So how did you get tuned into Wizardry in the first place? It was just a game that you're always like interested in, or just what turned you on to the series?
I was always into RPGs and whatever, and I'll admit I've always had this fascination with checking out lesser known games or lesser known titles, whatever. And back when I was in college, I had this fascination of like figuring out how we got here in gaming. So like, how did first person shooters get where we are today, or where we were back in, oh god, I was in college back in 2006, 2007. It's a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But you know, I was trying to play the first platformers, the first person shooters, the first shmups, the first RPGs, and that's basically how I got into Ultima and Wizardry. I'll admit I was a little, I thought it was a little strange that I could find a lot of information on Ultima, but there was barely anything on Wizardry even back then, which is odd because in terms of importance and in terms of the love they got in the West, it was about the same initially. Although, like you said correctly, Ultima retained its appeal in the West for a few years longer than Wizardry. Wizardry around the late 80s, early 90s started to decay in the West. But yeah, I was a little surprised that there was nothing there. There was hardly any information there, and I simply started playing them. And eventually, at some point, I basically learned that this is like back in the day, all you'd hear was basically every RPG comes from Ultima and Wizardry, and no one would ever explain anything more than that. It was like a dogma. Everyone would parrot the same thing, but no one said, how did we get there? Like, what did they draw from Ultima? What did they draw from Wizardry? Was it JRPGs, Western RPGs? What was it? And the more I started playing both Wizardry and Ultima with this mindset of trying to figure out what they inspire and how we got here, I guess I just kind of started loving more and more Wizardry, because not only was it simpler, it was more direct, easier to get into. In my opinion, it was a lot more fun because of the combat. It's really fun, in my opinion, once you figure it out. And it just became kind of like, it just left me dumbstruck when I basically discovered that the influence it had in JRPGs really cannot be understated. And even just how Japan views fantasy or Western fantasy, it's basically the basis of Japanese Western fantasy.
Mm-hmm. I've actually come away from just playing this version. I understand this is, as you said, kind of a remake, but not a remake of 5, more or less. but a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the character classes, a lot of the character tendencies, a lot of the enemies, a lot of the ways that you do your combat. I was thinking to myself, I can see this in Final Fantasy. I can see this in the Dragon Quest games. I can see this in Phantasy Star. So many other things made so much more sense. Just going back to like Dragon Quest V and how one of the initial big bad guys, or kind of the big bad guy in a way, is a bishop. And you might be thinking to yourself, why is a bad guy a bishop? How does that make sense? Like, bishops are supposed to be holy beings, and people are like, oh, this is a religious commentary or whatever. And then when like I sat down and thought about it, it was, oh, bishops and wizardry are just super powerful spellcasters. That's all they are. And all of a sudden things just started to click. Like, oh, this is how they made their games. This is how much these series influenced these role-playing game series that we all know and love today. And it just started blowing my mind the more and more I thought about it. So, yeah, it's like definitely getting hands on. I know your videos have been very informative, but getting hands on and playing them, you really start to get the feel for what these developers were doing in the 80s when they brought their games onto the console, and you see what they're trying to replicate.
Absolutely. Like, once you play the games and you kind of go in with this mindset, it really changes the perspective. And I think Labyrinth of Lost Souls' greatest strength and greatest weakness, it's basically a two-edged sword, is that it feels old. It feels very basic because, like I said, it's not a remake of 5, but it feels like they just took the formula of 5, didn't change anything, and just made a new entry. And it's fun because it feels like it's easy to get into. You got some much needed quality of life improvements. But it's pretty basic. It's a basic game, let's be honest. But it's also a good way of playing it and see, okay, so this is what people were doing back in 1985 or 1987. I can't remember the year it came out now. But it really puts you like in what RPGs were like back then, or what the avant-garde of RPGs were like back then. And you can see like the creator of Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest playing the game and being like, okay, I want to put this in my game as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. The deck giveaway is the torch, right?
Absolutely.
Right, we'll get to all that in gameplay. But before we do, let's get into the game's plot and writing. I'll open this up. I know I'm probably going to get destroyed by St1ka here because I'm sure he knows it. The game's plot plays once when you're opening it. Like, it goes through this entire background for the story, which I admittedly forget. And then you're dropped into a city. And essentially you're told, go do explorer things, and you're doubted. And then the story does develop into, eventually you have to find a missing king, and how him and his waifu went into the dungeon based off some bad intel. And then you have to make some decisions that determine the fate of the king and the kingdom, which is that pretty much the long and the short of it, St1ka? I know I'm missing a ton of context.
It's pretty much that, but like I've always said that the story in the first 5 games is basically meaningless.
Oh yeah,
and it mostly applies to this one as well. But what I feel this one does really well is that it, even though the story is pointless, the tone or like the overall feeling of dread or it has a very nihilistic feeling as you play the game. Like, your characters died, most people feel kind of depressing. Even the intro has this very oppressive song as it plays. And basically what they did is that they took the feeling of the gameplay from the early games and they just wrote a very basic story around it, because the early games usually had no story or a very normal RPG story, but the gameplay itself felt very oppressive. And that's basically what you get here as well, because I'm sure this happened to you. You took a wrong turn, you fought the wrong enemy, you went against the boss without being properly prepared, and you were crushed. And then you crawled yourself back to town, but then maybe someone didn't resurrect because the resurrection failed, or you didn't have enough money, or maybe you had to create a second party to rescue your first party. Like, it feels oppressive. And like I said, even though the story is kind of pointless, they really nailed the tone with the little plot that they had in here.
Oh, I save everywhere, so I didn't have to worry too much about that. Shane,
that's actually one quality of life the early games did not have.
I can imagine.
What did you think of the plot, Shane, or the writing here?
I mean, the writing, it kind of is what it is. It's more or less relegated to like just NPC blurbs, which are serviceable. It's fine. I think what I find interesting about the plot of this game, though, is that it's the game is like set in an otherwise pretty like lore rich environment, you know, with like a lot of ancient history, like all the stuff about like the god creating like the dragoon or whatever, how you pronounce that, like the descendants of dragon gods and the fall of that powerful civilization and the fracturing of the countries. And like, and then it's just like, yeah, okay, but we're not gonna talk about any of that. Go in the dungeon because there's stuff there. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of, it is what it is. Like I personally, I don't care. Like I need I mean, look, listen, man, you're talking to the person who, you know, Diablo 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. Just give me the smallest breadcrumb of a reason to go dungeon delving and I'm happy. So, I might not be the best person to talk to about plot in regards to this kind of game. I was just like, what? There's monsters? Okay, great. And that's all I needed. So,
yeah, I will say, I mean, if you want to get into the lore, there are things that will benefit you within this world. Definitely. The tone, I think, is what stateside said. That is really where I think it hits, especially as you get deeper and deeper in Sheehan's dungeon. Not so much in the deep trials, but like that's where all the plot is. The exposition, if you want to call it that, is in Sheehan's dungeon about what Sheehan's history is, what's going on with King Diamant the Fifth, and just procedurally getting quests that don't really seem like they tie in together whatsoever. But at the very end, everything just, the deeper and deeper you get in these dungeons, the more things do tie together and the more a cohesive plot does develop. Now, is it a gripping plot? Is that where you're playing this game? I mean, no, but it's not terrible. I mean, it does seem to be one very large quest that you're trying to find out information about. That does have a pretty decent payoff in the end. It's not, is it the best payoff? No. Is it pretty much cliched? Is it just, you have to have an ends to a means in order to justify having an end boss? Yes. Is it going to change your life? Probably not. But I think that tone, that oppressive tone, especially when you start seeing shadows in the dungeons that you walk up to and you don't know what you're going to get out of that interaction, it does help create a world within the dungeon itself. And I think it does do that very well, even though that's entirely not the point of this game. But the other thing is that this game knows that. It knows you're not playing it for the plot. It's just putting things in there seemingly to make sure that you continue to advance to the dungeons. And there is some sort of carrot at the end to justify everything that you're doing. So I do appreciate that. I do like how it's dark, too. It's a nice dark plot. Some decent political intrigue. Nothing deep. It's just cool. That's what I'll say about that.
I agree, and like you said, I think one of the things that really appeals to me is like when you're in the dungeon and when you're alone in the dungeon, it feels like oppressive, and when you're deep enough into it and you don't know how you're going to get back if you're getting trouble, or like is there maybe some point where I can rest in the future or find a chest with items, you just know that you're at a point that if something goes wrong, you're screwed. Like you have no way of getting back. And in that way, the Wizardry games, including this one, I would say they start crossing a little bit into a horror game territory, like Resident Evil, where you have to manage your dwindling supply of items, for example. Mm-hmm. And Wizardry kind of inadvertently did that, but as an RPG, it's just because it was played by the Japanese who had no context of the plot or the tone of the original series, they just interpreted that as a horror mechanic or what we call now a Dark Souls aesthetic, I guess. And they basically applied that to this game.
Well, yeah, a great example of that, which you mentioned in your series, stateside, was the Vorpal Bunny, which is a dead-ass serious enemy in the Wizardry games.
Absolutely.
Like, here's an enemy that doesn't hit for too much damage, but randomly can decapitate you in one hit and instant kill. And you're like, why is a Vorpal bunny like this? Well, because in the original, I think you said in the original Wizardry series, the creators there used the rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail and said, we're going to make this an enemy as a joke enemy in our game. And then the Japanese players were like, oh, here's this killer bunny. Let's make it a real enemy. And just like they couldn't connect the context. So now it's a mainstay enemy with no real connection to Monty Python. They're not in on the joke. They're taking it seriously.
Excuse
and there's
me.
just a lot of that.
You should be taking it seriously. Have you seen that thing? It's got a mean streak a mile wide. There's a reason it's called the Rabbit of Carabanol.
The Vorpal bunny.
I don't know if you've seen the Vorpal bunny on Variants Daphne, but they've made that thing really menacing design-wise.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. But like, what is it? The enemy in, I think, Wizardry 5, what's his name? It's Andrew Backwards.
yes, it's the boss from the first Wizardry game, yes.
Yeah, Verdna. And the Japanese, just like when they brought it over, they thought it, like, because it was a joke about one of the developers or one of the members of the team. They're just like, let's just reverse the name. This will be funny. The Japanese were like, oh, the serious wizard Verdna, like menacing. It's so cool. Like localization differences it's amazing. Shane, anything to add for the plot?
I think we covered it pretty well. I mean, I just echo that, I just generally the sort of aesthetic that I tend to lean towards being the Dark Souls, Diablo, like dark fantasy kind of person. Like this. Oh yeah. This fits in my wheelhouse pretty well. So I definitely enjoy that aspect of it for sure.
I'll let you kick off the gameplay here about since dungeon crawlers are your jam.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So explain Wizardry to us. What are we doing?
Well, you are crawling a dungeon in the first person perspective, one air quotes tile at a time. It's, when you really think about it, like that mechanic is so weird to try to explain to someone who's like never heard of that or didn't grow up with that back then. Like they're like, why? That would be the first question, right? It'd be like, why? Like, why do you have to move one space at a time? Like, are we simulating a board game? What's happening here? The answer would be kinda, sorta. I mean, also you could make the argument that it was a limitation of the time because you're moving one static image at a time, and that's how all the game could do way back when. And so it's sort of like just grandfathered that mechanic in, even though we absolutely had the capability of free movement. But now it's just like a staple of the series, which for the record, I actually really like. I can't really explain why. I just like it. But anyway, that is basically what it is. This is just a straight up first person dungeon crawler. You don't really ever see your own characters other than the character portraits, and all of the like combat and interactions are purely menu based. I think that description alone probably just lost like at least half of the people listening because they're just like, oh, cool. It's stilted movement and menu navigation. Wow, what a treat. And then there's the weirdos like us who actually really enjoy that kind of gameplay. So for the rest of you still sticking around.
To be fair, the stilted movement for whatever reason feels really satisfying, and I don't know why.
Exactly. I can't explain why, but it just does. Yeah. The closest thing I can come to as like a tabletop RPG player myself is that it's like basically the digital like approximation of like a D&D map, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Like for me, it kind of feels like those like a fidget cube or something, or like when you fit two Lego pieces, it's just oddly satisfying fitting two pieces together. It just kind of feels like that when you move in a grid-based game. I don't know. I can't really explain, but it just feels like satisfying. Like each movement you make on a map is like two pieces fitting together, and I don't know why it feels satisfying.
Well, Chris and I were talking about that like offline yesterday at the time of this recording, and we were talking about how it's like oddly satisfying to 100% explore each dungeon level, like making sure you're uncovering every square of the map. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
which can become a pain later when you're supposed to be looking for specific treasure chests on certain floors that you've already explored. Then it becomes kind of are you serious right now? I've already covered every single square inch. Where do you want me to look? I don't know where. I'll just go to this forum here. Okay, there. Yeah, I think that's the thing that really draws me to this is I have a map, and every single time I move, a new square on the map gets filled. I want to fill in all the squares. It's like a coloring book. It's like a coloring book for masochistic adults. It's great.
There you go. You're on a roll with these. You're finding my episode subtitles for me. I appreciate that. Wizardry, Labyrinth of Lost Souls, coloring book for masochists.
But in terms of combat, if you've played the first Final Fantasy, as in the Final Fantasy, this is that. Not the exploration. We already said that's a first-person dungeon crawling experience. But in terms of when you get into a battle, you have the enemies line up in front of you, like Dragon Quest style. So I guess you could say Dragon Quest as well. But you have, your fight, you have your spell, you have your item. Some in the beginning of the game, you don't have these, but later on you'll have a special ability and you'll have run. So probably more analogous to Final Fantasy III, the Famicom version, where certain characters have special abilities and you have more than just the fight, item, magic, run. And that's it. If you want your character to attack, you hit fight. Now there's a front and a rear formation. So here's another thing you could pull from. Suikoden does this too, where you have certain weapons that can attack from the front row or the back row. You have certain weapons that can hit enemies in their back row from the back row, like a boomerang. You have weapons that can only attack from the front row. In fact, they're labeled the exact same way that they're labeled in the Suikoden games if you played those. So an S weapon can only attack from the front row against another front row, or where an M weapon can attack from the rear against the front row, or a back or a second row if you attack from the front. And then there's L and LL, which you can attack from the back row to various lengths within the depths of the enemy field. Knowing all that's pretty critical if you want to, in how you align your characters based off their different classes. And they have their own race and class, but class is usually what's more important later on, because that can determine what weapons they can equip, what armor they can equip, and what spells they can equip. Also, the spell system is exactly the same as Final Fantasy, the first one and the third one, whereas you have spell charges, and they go up to 9. You'll never have more than 9. So you can use a spell up to, in that level, 9 times, any spell in there. And they do refill when you level up, which is awesome. Your health doesn't, but your magic charges do. But yeah, it's if you've played Final Fantasy, you have played this game. I'll lay it out there. It's essentially the same thing, except you have a row that kind of complicates things a little bit more than that.
And one thing that usually kind of trips people is that your enemies can have more than 2 rows. Like they can have 3 rows, for example, and they constantly switch between them. So you can be lucky enough to have the mages in the front row, and then suddenly they switch to the back row or whatever, and it just messes up all the orders for the rest of the battle, for example.
So what's everyone's? Stateside, I'll let you go first here. What's your favorite class combination? What do you start out with?
I usually start out with the basic classes, like fighters at the forefront, and like thief, mage, and priest in the background. Although I do that just so that I with the purpose of then upgrading them to lords or ninjas in this case. Usually, my okay. Basically, comes down to this. It comes down to how much time am I willing to invest in this? Because if I feel like I have a lot of time, I will literally try to turn my mages into bishops or into priests, so that I can use both all magic spells from both schools of magic. Because the way it works is you begin with mages or with priests, and they can evolve into more advanced forms. Which unlock more spells of their schools, or they can unlock both schools of magic. But here's the thing: if you choose the class that unlocks both schools of magic, it's kind of like the red mage in Final Fantasy 1. You don't get the best one. So I usually just go like insane and try to unlock every spell from both schools of magic for all my magic users. So I go the hard route. I go from a magic user back to a priest, which is technically not an upgrade, it's a side grade, and it takes longer. But in the long run, it just makes the game easier, because then because there's no mana in the game. Like you said, it's spell slots, so nothing's stopping you from basically having a near infinite supply of spells to use if you do it this way. For the warriors or for the front row, I usually turn them into priests first, so they can collect some magic healing spells, and then I go for the Lord class. As for the thief class, I just go full ninja. Ninjas are like the best class in the entire game. They decapitate, they open chests, they're like perfect in my opinion.
Yeah, ninjas I found to be really good. The one thing I would say about bishops is that in this game they learn every spell.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The issue is, as I talk about this, sometimes I get confused because most Wizardry games do things slightly different.
Oh, sure.
And it's easy to get a little confused sometimes.
I think bishops take more experience to level up than a priest or a mage, but not that much more. Yeah. And then their spell charges for the priest side take longer to level up than the mage side. So, I mean, you're getting spells at different times, but like a fully leveled bishop will have everything in this game, which kind of breaks the bishop, but their equipment limitations are much more severe. That's kind of the trade-off there.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember that. And the thing is, if you're willing to put in the effort, you can technically have like a full party of warriors with every magic school maxed out. It's possible. I mean, it takes a lot of time. Yeah, but it's possible. But it's also kind of addicting, like switching classes and then just maxing out whatever you need from each class.
Oh, definitely. Except when you lose, when you start losing stats and start losing attributes, like my ninja that I converted requires 15 of everything, and I got him up to level 29, and now his vid is 8. Like, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, those are the moments where we're just kind of you just want to scream bullshit at the game.
Yeah. Shane, I know you said you wanted to talk about that.
I mean, I have an idea of why your ninja's vitality might be an 8, and it might not have anything to do with losing stats on leveling up.
Why is that?
It might be because, and I didn't know this until literally right before we started recording, which is making me like question my life choices, having played the game before this, that apparently every time a character gets killed and then resurrected, they lose 1 point of vitality.
That. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. You're punished for resurrecting characters as well. Yes.
Yup. So I've definitely done that a few times. So that's cool.
So it's better just to reload a save.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing is like save scumming for this game is 100% encouraged because it does not care about your feelings at all.
That's horrible.
But on that note, though, so the other piece that I think is important with that, right, is there is technically permadeath for the characters in this game, which if you are familiar with Wizardry, that's not anything new to you necessarily. But for those that aren't, it's easily avoidable because you can just reload a save, but it does still suck. I've had it happen a couple times. And then, of course, I just reload and replay where I was. But what ends up happening, right, is let's say, for instance, you come across a very cute little Vorpal bunny who's not really doing too much damage. And you're like, man, he's so adorable. And then like a Tonberry out of nowhere, he just one-shots your ass and your character is dead. And you're like, oh, well, great. And let's also say that you don't have a bishop or something yet that can, cast a resurrection spell. So you go back to town. And the character's body gets immediately brought to the temple because nobody wants that corpse just decaying in the middle of the street. So they bring it up there, and you're like, "Hey, I'll pay my tithe to help. Could you bring them back, please?" And they're like, "All right, let's give this thing a shot." And they rub their hands together and they go, "All right, go. And then there's a chance that your character's body gets reduced to literal ashes. And you're like, wow, that was a great use of my money. Thank you. And they're like, well, if you pay us again, we could give it another shot. And you're like, that seems exploitative, but okay. And so then you give them more money and they're like, all right. And then they spit in their hands this time and rub them together because that means they mean business. And they're like, all right, go. And then the ashes disintegrate and your person is gone forever. And that is how you get permadeath. I actually had that happen once and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go replay the last 20 minutes or so because fuck that noise, especially since it was like a level 20 samurai. And I'm like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah, that does happen. So now if any character dies, I'm just reloading a save because I don't want them to lose fit.
Yeah, no.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I do want to...
Yes.
I do want to talk about this game's difficulty, which I'm sure we all have opinions on here. Is this game exceedingly hard? Not all the time.
Yeah.
I think like the first couple of levels in the Dungeons of Trials are very manageable, same as Sheehan's Dungeon. But then I think there's definitely a wall where the game is like it's just like we're not fucking around anymore. We're going to crush you.
Yeah.
And that's Sheehan's Dungeon level 5. And then, and it's like, okay, I'm getting my ass pounded. It's time to rethink life decisions. And so, like, you can go back into Dungeons of Trials and level up a little bit, probably start getting closer to changing your class. And then I found that once you get to near the end game, which, of course, this makes sense, around Sheehan's Dungeon 9F and 10F, it's almost like you have to have a fully loaded party of magic users because all I was doing was spamming Now Burst, which essentially is Flare, just to try and survive, or like level 8, level 9 spells constantly. And then once I adjusted to that, especially with enemies there's these enemies called Hayates, they suck. Samurais, they suck. Leapers, they suck. So you can have this ability called Magic Wall, which is supposed to stand up against so many attacks, and these enemies will just knock it out in one turn and then kill one of your characters without even thinking about it. You're just constantly dying. And then I was like, okay, I'm finally adjusted. My party's finally surviving, and I go face the last boss and just like, here's a magic spell that does 800 damage to everybody. What? Your character's highest HP level 600? I guess you gotta grind more. And like at the end of the game, it's just like this game all it wants to do is just fuck with me. That's all it wants to do is just fuck with me.
So I think
you're laughing. So that's how it is. Okay, got it.
I'm laughing because that's basically every Wizardry game. Like towards the end, it just becomes so much bullshit. And once the series basically gained a saving feature, it was like giving the developers permission to make things even more bullshit than before.
Yes.
Because like from Wizardry 6 onwards, which is once you gain the save ability, the ability to save whenever you want, that's basically every end game of every Wizardry game. Like you just get this huge difficulty spike towards the end, and it just becomes absolutely impossible. And you're just going online reading guides, and you're thankful that you're in the 21st century where there are guides to read, and you're just wondering, how the hell did anyone actually finish this game legitimately? Yeah. That's the modern Wizardry experience.
It's punishing.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about the difficulty, I'm reticent to call it a curve at all, but it's like you have a very steep learning curve right at the very beginning because there's a lot of mechanics and things that you need to wrap your head around first. Like to the point where I actually completely restarted my playthrough because I had chosen a party just on vibes. You know, I was like, yeah, this seems all right. And then quickly realized that was not going to work well after I got through a few levels of the dungeon. And I was like, nope. All right, I'm going to bail on this before I invest too much more time, and came back around. And the party that I ultimately stuck with was a knight and 2 samurais in the front. My main character is a samurai. And then I've got a bishop, a lord, and a thief in the back row. And that worked really well. So I was happy with that. But that took a little trial and error to kind of figure out that that's what I wanted to do. So there's like that really steep curve, which honestly would probably, even with this game being relatively less difficult than the other Wizardry titles, I could 100% see like right off the get this game kind of like turning a lot of people off, where they're just like, I have no fucking idea what I'm supposed to do with this. Once you get over that hump, though, there's like a pretty good like middle section there where honestly, for the most part, it feels real good. Like you've got your head wrapped around the mechanics. You got a decent party. You've gotten into like the main gameplay loop, and it's pretty comfy. But then, as you know, Chris was saying, you get further enough, and then it just ramps it right back up again. And it's like, okay, well, we're glad that you were enjoying yourself. Now get fucked. And like, that's the rest of the game.
Yeah. I didn't call it a difficulty cliff. I called it a difficulty rocket launch.
Difficulty catapult.
Yes.
The issue is I don't know the English word. I usually say it's in Portuguese. It's a, I don't know if this word exists in English. A parable? Parable? The mathematics
parabola.
Word?
Yeah.
Parabola.
Parabola. Okay, I didn't know the English word. It's basically that. It just goes up and never stops. Once you reach a certain point. But to be fair, I feel like the game like also gives you a very clear warning of what it's going to be at the beginning, because like you said, the very beginning of the game is more difficult than like the middle or the following segments, because you're level 1 and even a group of goblins can wipe out your entire party, and you're going to feel that way until you get at least level 2 or 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You actually see a lot of that nowadays in the Shin Megami Tensei series. I see that carried over quite a bit. In terms,
absolutely,
yeah, where that like the beginning of any SMT game up until like even some of the Persona games, it's very difficult in the beginning, like mind-bendingly difficult, and those are also dungeon crawlers. So I mean, borrows elements from that as well. You could say maybe not directly, but you know, just has how JRPGs go. And as you get more abilities, you become more comfortable, and the game gets a little easier. And then the game is like, okay, now that you're comfortable, we're going to destroy you again. Have fun.
To be fair, like you can really tell that Atlas were Wizardry fans. Like, it feels like everyone at Atlas like played Wizardry and enjoyed Wizardry, and you feel that it at times it almost feels like a spin-off of the Wizardry series.
I think you could. Oh, especially with the Shin Megami Tensei series.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
And the funny thing is, like, all of this happens because, like I said, they played the Japanese versions without context. Like, if you play the Western versions, the world feels a lot goofier.
It should, like Ultima does.
exactly. Only like the difficulty is extreme, but it's goofy as hell. But then you play like the Japanese versions, and they're like, oh no, this is super serious. This is a nihilistic world, and there's no joy in this world. And it's kind of funny because even today, like even in modern times, I watch modern anime and I'm like, okay, this guy played Wizardry, and I can tell, and like I had this moment, like, okay, I know this isn't an anime discussion, but I once watched Goblin Slayer, which it's okay, it's a fairly decent anime, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this guy played Wizardry. And then, like a few years later, I was told that the guy is writing a book on Wizardry. I'm like, there we go. I was right. Like you can tell how it affects a lot of people even today.
I just hope I don't run into a slug that can turn me to ash in one attack.
Oh, actually, like I said, I finished this game years ago, and for this video, I basically loaded my old save and started goofing around. There's one thing I don't remember about this game. Does it have enemies that lower your level? Because those exist in the earlier games.
I couldn't find one.
Okay, good. Just so you know, that's also a real possibility.
Gross.
Yeah, that is insane to me. Like that would be a I'm done with this game moment for me. Like 100%.
Yeah, the first 5 games have like near the end have a couple of those that they will actually lower your level.
We kind of did deviate away from the class discussion. I think that's fine. We'll leave that behind. Because, I mean, we covered that. But how about class changing? Shane, did you ever get to a point where you could class change?
Nah, man, I didn't get enough time to even get that far. Like I said, my party is right around like level 20, and apparently it's not good enough to do that until like 30, so.
Well, I mean, you could do it at any time.
Well, yeah, but apparently, like, if I'm going to do it, you know, optimally or whatever.
Yeah. Because I know I reached out to Stateside and was like, hey, when's the best time to do it? And he says, well, at some point your characters start gaining 1 HP, which I didn't see that. I've made it to beyond level 30, and I've seen various discussions on when the best time to do it is. But essentially, it comes down to player preference and what they want to do and what's best for the player experience. Because when you change your class, and again, this is a Final Fantasy thing, because there are advanced classes, like technically Samurai is an advanced fighter class, and Lord is an advanced fighter class, and Ninja is an advanced thief class. Same with Bishop, as we kind of alluded to earlier. For me, I wanted to wait until their HP gets high and they have all their spell slots filled out, because what happens is that when you switch your class, you go back to level 1 and you get to keep all the spells you've learned, but you only get half the spell slots. And you don't get to keep, you get to keep all your stats, but you only get to keep half of your hit points. So if you have 700 hit points, you go back to level 1, you're 350 hit points with half of whatever spell slots you have. So if you swap your level at like level 20, and at level 20, you're probably only going to have like 300 hit points, you might go to a position where you have less hit points than what you had when you were level 1 in that class. So it's not that smart to do at that point. You want to wait until whatever half is more than what you were at level 1 to increase your total HP potential. Is that about right?
That's pretty much it. Although to be fair, like, some people do try to change classes as early as possible, just like to lessen the damage that you get with the HP cut, and to basically get like very useful early spells, like a basic healing spell, for example. Like, because you're gonna need a lot of those, so that you can like just use those spell slots outside of battle and save the really good healers for inside of battle, for example. That's also a legitimate strategy. So, but what you described is the most commonly used strategy, I would say, and yeah, it's pretty much what most people do, and it just applies unless, like I said, unless you try to be like a lunatic like me and tries to max out everything and see, okay, how far can I max out every class?
One thing too about the classes, I have to ask. I didn't try this, and I'm pretty sure you have. If I take a fighter and he's a level 30 fighter, and I cross him over to a lord, and I level him up to level 30 lord, if I bring him back over to a fighter, is he level 30 again, or does he go back to level 1?
I'm trying to remember for this one specifically, but I'm pretty sure he's still level 30. It varies depending on the Wizardry game, but I'm pretty sure he's still level 30. Sorry, I actually didn't do that when I was goofing off with my old save. Okay, but I'm pretty sure he retains his old level.
Okay, does that mean if they did that, you could completely break this game?
Yeah,
it's just keep jumping back and forth between classes that have a ton of hit points.
Well, pretty much, yes.
Speaking of breaking things, one thing I found out when I was re-rolling my class earlier on, or re-rolling my party earlier on rather, was that you can apparently very easily cheese the game's character creation system, basically like you would re-roll in a gacha game. And by that I mean, when you go to, because you can create a new character basically anytime. Like, you have this like roster of characters that you kind of just have sitting in the wings, and which is also interesting because if you completely remove your main character like I did, I just deleted the save and created a new one, all the characters I'd created previously were still there. Like, the game, that like it persists. So the game only has like one save file, which is interesting. But when you're creating those characters for your party, you can just kind of keep going in and out of the character creation screen because there's a randomized number of bonus attribute points that you get. And if you just keep bouncing back and forth, eventually you get a stupid number. Like, the reason that I started with a lord in my party is because he rolled 37 bonus points right off the get. So I would highly suggest doing that.
That mechanic has been there like since the first game, and even the MMO had that one, which was kind of funny because it just meant people would waste like hours for their MMO character, as you can imagine. But yeah, like they at some point, like the Wizardry series even went off the rails with that, like Wizardry 6, because you would technically only have your 6 characters, your main party. You would spend like hours just re-rolling the same characters over and over again. But basically, yes, that is something that has been around like since the first game, basically. And it's highly recommended that you spend at least 1 hour or two creating your initial party, because those bonus stat points will come very useful in the future.
I just feel like I don't understand the purpose of that. Like, it's one of those game mechanics that probably was like sounded good on paper, and then in practice I'm just like, what does this add to the game, right? Like
D&D.
Well, right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
but that's
it
the
came
thing,
from
though,
D&D.
is like, even with well, granted, I mean, we're talking back in like the 80s, so it would have been
First edition.
Yeah,
they're all based on first
advanced
edition.
D&D, yeah. But anyway, so that makes sense, I guess, because I'm thinking like even the newer like D&D like editions now have methods built right in, like baked into the game of just like, hey, you could randomly roll your stats when you make a character, or you could just pick this stat spread and just be good. Like, so they kind of realized that maybe that was an issue, so that you're not rolling like absolute the garbage dumpster fire numbers for your stats. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, even the early Ultima games had this. Like in the early Ultima games, you also had like characters rerolling, and you had to press the reroll button until you'd get the correct stats you'd want.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, Ultima eventually abandoned this, as did most RPGs, but Wizardry suffered from two basic main issues. The first is that the people who made the main series, they were traditionalists to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they kept using the same game engine, they kept using the same gameplay, basically, so they kept that in. And once it went Japanese, well, then it went to a society where they're also traditionalists to a fault. And so every game made in Japan also has this. And it's gotten to a point where I don't think anyone even remembers why they still have this.
So what you're saying is that between Ultima and Wizardry, the titans in the mythological sense of JRPGs, Wizardry is the Dragon Quest and Ultima is the Final Fantasy.
Honestly, I would say more like that. Wizardry is the Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, and Ultima is the Mass Effect and the Baldur's Gate and The Witcher, basically.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Like because when you play both back to back, you kind of see that Ultima's major influence was in towns, freedom, quests, side quests, which isn't really Wizardry's thing, and Wizardry was more about the combat and the lore and the types of enemies. So the truth is, you don't see a lot of Wizardry in Western RPGs, to be honest. Like, if you go play Mass Effect or The Witcher or Baldur's Gate, there's very little Wizardry there, hardly anything. And I would say that whatever Wizardry there is in there is probably just a coincidence at this point. Not really something that the developers willingly or unwittingly drew from Wizardry. It was more from Ultima, like dialogue choices, a journal filled with side quests, a world map to explore, that sort of thing. Whereas Japan basically just took the very basic concepts of Ultima. So you have towns and you have a world map, but the world map is linear. And everything else feels basically like Wizardry, in my opinion.
I was more going down the line of Ultima tried different things, whereas Wizardry is much more traditional. No, but you make a great point, though. I think that still applies because, I mean, they're still very foundational role-playing games, and I think a lot of people think they're essentially the same thing. So I think that point being made is important.
Yeah, I would say like the only time that the Wizardry series really innovated and tried something different was 7 and 8, which, as far as I know, Japan hated, but the Westerners loved it. So 7 and 8 are kind of forgotten by Japan at this point. And really, only the old school Wizardry, Western Wizardry fans remember 7 and 8. And every other game is basically Labyrinth of Lost Souls under different mechanics or different flavors, I'd say.
Okay. But we're talking about other Wizardry games now. Nothing wrong with that. No. That's completely fine. But it is a good indicator that it is time to perhaps move on into the presentation, starting with this game's graphics. I'll kick this off by saying they're fine. I think st1ka brought up a good point earlier that they were being made on a budget. And I think that's the best way to describe this game. This is definitely, it gives off budget made vibes.
Absolutely.
For lack of a better term. It feels that way. What did you think, Shane?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really bother me at all. If anything, you could probably make some sort of like convoluted argument that it's like it's an homage to the earlier games because all the stuff is 2D artwork. I don't think that was necessarily the driving factor behind it, but I mean, you know, that does work too. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. It does what it needs to. I mean, there's really not a lot there to begin with, right? I mean, when you really think about it, you have one static like town area. Mm-hmm. And then you have, well, with the DLC, you've got 3 different like dungeon areas, but they're all pretty much just like tile sets. So not a ton of variety. But it does what it needs to do. I don't think there's really anything egregious here. And for the record, I like the art style of the enemy. I guess they're not really sprites so much, but the enemy designs, I like them. I think the art style is pretty good. It is a little discordant though with like the the full on anime character portraits that we have. There's a weird dissonance there, which was actually pointed out by somebody when we were playing this on stream, where it's just like,
I think it was Keith.
Yeah, I think it was Keith. It's just like the art direction is kind of all over.
I can explain the dissonance though. I can explain the dissonance.
Okay.
The character portraits are all anime, as you said, and the enemy designs are all basically taken from Super Nintendo Wizardry 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you've probably seen the Succubus boss, the one with the red hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very familiar with that one.
She is like a complete copy of the Succubus boss, of the Succubus enemy from the Super Nintendo version of Wizardry 2. You put the two side by side, same design. Or there's like a demon that has like a whip, like an energy whip, and two horns. I'll show the design later. Mm-hmm. His design was taken exactly from Wizardry 5. Basically, almost every enemy was like they took the Super Nintendo sprites of the remakes of Wizardry 1, 2, 3, and Wizardry 5, and then they just put it in the game. And then for the characters, they went full anime, which, as you said, they kind of clash.
Yeah, they do. But outside of that, I mean, I could take or leave the anime aesthetic, honestly, but I mean, the rest of it I like, but I think that's just my Western sensibilities kicking in. But yeah, no, I mean, it's fine. I like it. I think the biggest thing is the atmosphere, really. I think the art direction did a great job of really creating that sort of oppressive atmosphere that we were talking about in the plot section. So I think that's probably the thing that stands out the most to me.
Yeah, and I think all of that comes together well. I think the atmosphere of the dungeon, the aesthetic of the dungeon does work as basic as it is. And I think that's the most underlying thought I have, is that are the graphics impressive? No, but I don't feel like they were trying to be, and I don't feel like it hinders the experience. If anything, and maybe as you suggested, Shane, it is by accident, it did accentuate the experience a little bit, especially now that we've moved so far away from that kind of game. Now that being, this game is 16 years old, and when this came out in 2009, it probably would have been a little bit more sour. But now, of course, with as many indie games that have come out, and you know the law of diminishing returns when it comes to graphical fidelity, I think people have, like, especially us, have been able to, like retro gamers, look back at games no matter when they came out and just basically judge them on the merits and whether or not it actually works. Is it choppy? Is it functional? And everything here is 100% functional. No, the enemy designs don't animate, which is an interesting choice, but do they have to? Not really. And if anyone gets nervous by stateside saying that the designs are from the Super Nintendo, lifted from the Super Nintendo, they have been up-resed. Like, these aren't 16-bit sprites. These are, if they're the same, they're either the source image or a completely redrawn image of what those are to fit.
If you check out the chat, I posted the 2 screenshots, one of the Super Nintendo original and the other one of the Lost Souls remake. And you can tell they're the same design, basically.
Yeah, I kept running to that demon later in the game. He's not that bad. The Rita Repulsa looking dude, he's that guy's an
that's
asshole.
A good way of putting it. Yeah, pretty much. But if you check the above screenshot, that's from Wizardry 5, and you can tell it's the same design, basically.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's totally, it's more of a Western design, which It's cool for the dungeon. I have no issues with it. It does contrast a lot with
I agree.
the humans, the non-monsters. But I think that didn't bother me. I thought it was kind of cool. It's almost like, what is it? God, it's one of those animes. I don't want to say Devil May Cry, but it's not Devil May Cry. Devilman.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, that's more anime, but like Devilman Crybaby, like the contrast between the human characters and they transformed into their demon forms. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting here with the designs in Wizardry and the approach there.
But yeah, it's basically I agree with you. It feels like a game on a budget, but I think they did fairly well with what they had, which is, enemies are basically static to the images. The graphics are all fairly simple 3D, but it kind of works. I think the art style or the art direction, coupled with the soundtrack and the ambient sound, it's greater than the sum of its parts, I'd say.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the sound. Let's keep going on that, stateside. What did you think about the sound design? Just expand on that a little bit.
I generally enjoy the soundtrack. I think it starts really well. I think the opening theme song is really good, in my opinion. I think the weakest part of the soundtrack, in my opinion, is the city, the town itself. I think it's very generic. They really could have done something better there. But where it really shines is the dungeon, where for the most part there is no music. There's only ambient sounds, but it works. Like, it works really well. Again, it lends itself to that idea I've said that at times the game feels more like a horror game than an RPG.
That's a great ringing endorsement for the game's soundtrack, by the way. The best parts are in the dungeon where there's no music. But you're right.
No,
you're right,
it is the overall sound design, Chris. We've said on the show before that effective use of silence is just as important. So I happen to agree with st1ka.
I'm just laughing. I'm just laughing at how, if I put it in that context, it's a little fun. All I'm saying. Best part of the soundtrack is when there's no music.
Well,
right.
I'll say what's actually a little funny is some of the sound clips that we get from killing the enemies. Good Lord.
All sorts of stuff. Just the sound,
just kind of all over the place.
The voice sampling is unchained.
The voices,
they're unchained.
Yeah, I really hate when you get like, okay, admittedly part of that can be my fault, but like when you pick one of the smaller classes and they have those like really thin voices, those really anime-esque, very girly voices, like some of the races have that, and I'm like, oh man, no, why? It's just such a clash of different styles.
Oh, you don't want your parents walking in while your pork-loo female is getting bashed.
Yeah.
It's okay. I think my parents are already disappointed with me. It's fine.
Okay. One problem I had on my computer, I don't know if this is in the PS3 version, if you experienced it as well, Shane, because I can't hear your audio while you're on stream. There's a lot of popping on the voice sampling particularly if a lot was going on. Like it made it sound like the speakers were blowing out. Like it was very crackly. Like the sampling wasn't always the best, or sometimes the voices would be really quiet. So it either went to like the gain was turned up all the way to someone was recording in another room. So it didn't feel like it was very consistent across the board with voice sampling, particularly for your characters.
Yeah, I had that happen a few times. I'm not sure if it was, I wasn't paying close enough attention to determine whether or not it was like a specific voice sample that kept doing it, or if it was just like a circumstantial thing. But yeah, there were definitely a few times where the sound sounded a little fried.
Yeah,
I've only played a bit of the PC version, as I also own it. And two things I noticed is I didn't notice the sound issue, but I did notice that like it didn't feel as smooth as a PS3 version. Like sometimes the game was just kind of hang up on me, or like the control wasn't as responsive. I can't really explain it too well, but it feels like a very rushed PS3 port is the best way I can describe it.
And that makes sense, because I mean, trying to port something from the PS3, from what I have heard, to PC is difficult because of the PS3 and the cell architecture and It's all that stuff. They're probably getting it over fairly tedious and not all that enjoyable. So
and when you add that to the fact that it's a low budget PS3 game, it doesn't help.
Yeah, and probably Xseed isn't putting a ton of money to make sure that it's a great port on your PC either. I wouldn't say they're doing the bare minimum. That's not what I'm trying to suggest, but like they're not going to break their back to fix all the issues that may have existed there.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, I mean, I get that. So if you're playing this on PS3 sounds like the best way to play it then, because that's what it was developed for.
Mm-hmm.
If you still have that hooked up and hanging around.
It's just a shame that the only physical version of this game was only in Japanese. It kills me with that. Because I would have imported this game. And it's kind of funny too, because like I recommended this game to you too, and I was afraid that you'd be like, okay, st1ka, I get where you're coming from, but it's not for me, or this just feels too old or too ancient.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can't remember which one of you it was. I think it was a Zodiac that says, okay, you know what, st1ka, I think this game pleasantly surprised me.
Yeah. And you'll get to hear what we think about that when we get to whether or not this game holds up, because I think you're going to be, I think you should be pleasantly surprised. With that being said, anything we need to do before we start heading into the Patreon pontifications?
I think this is the only thing. I just like to reiterate what I said before, that this game's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness, and that it's a fairly basic game, and it works because it means that it's a very good introduction point to the series. But like if you're expecting a deep dungeon crawler with all the bells and whistles of modern games, you're going to be a bit disappointed, because it's just going to feel like someone took a Super Nintendo game basically and updated the visuals and audio, even though it's a fully original game.
I would generally, in a general sense, agree with that. Anything else you want to add, Shane?
No, man, I think we covered it pretty well.
Okay. So let's head into our Patreon pontifications before we tell you whether or not we think this game holds up today. And if you want your pontification for a game that we are talking about to appear on the show, all you got to do is, head over to our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And you look at the comment that will bring up the next game that we will be discussing, and you can put your thoughts there. Or you can just head over to our Discord once you're a patron, and head over to our Patreon pontifications channel, and you also have an opportunity to post there. And that's where almost all of our comments come from, is from the Discord. And we'll start with Lethgo from the Afterglow podcast. And his pontification was just a picture of killing the dragon from Dio, the cover album art there. That was his pontification for Wizardry.
I mean, that's pretty sick album art, for the record.
That is some sick album art. It is really good. I'll also cover the next one, which is from SegaBoy7. And SegaBoy7's comment is, wait, when did Wizardry get hot?
When it went full ooh-woo. That's when.
That's when. Give me my gnomes. Give me my dwarfen warrior princess. Here
Wizardry went hot once it went Japanese, basically. I'd say around the early 90s with the PC Engine or the Super Nintendo.
That makes sense.
There you go.
Definitely PC Engine.
Yeah.
NEC loves their waifus.
Actually, like I didn't use the design on the video, but I think I remember there's an actual naked female enemy in the PC Engine version, but I'd have to check which one.
That would track. Probably a succubus.
Probably, most likely, yeah.
It's fine. We'll have to do some research for science.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I should probably still have all the designs around my computer if you want. I'll share them because I use them for my thumbnail and for the video. I should still have them.
We'll share them in our patron chat. There you go.
There you go. Speaking of the patrons, the next one we have up on the list for pontifications is Alt. You approach a dead end in the maze. You encounter a satchel lying half open under a tree. Do you investigate? Of course you do. You're no bitch. Thwack! An apple falls and lands on your head. Negative 10 HP. I don't know if events like this occur in Wizardry, but they sure as fuck do in Etrian Odyssey, though. Anyway, go play Etrian Odyssey and Persona Q. Jokes aside, I have never played a Wizardry game. I've played other DRPGs like Etrian Odyssey, Persona Q, Demon Gaze, and a few others, but I've never played the grandfather of them, if this is even considered that. I don't know, I'll learn this in this episode, I guess. The early game for the DRPGs I've played are usually miserable experiences, because once you fight a battle or two, you felt like you had to go back and heal. It never really kicked in for me until 50% of the way through an Etrian Odyssey game, to basically have the moment of a cigar in my mouth A-team style, knowing that your build or plan is finally all coming together. Sorry, this is extra long. I'm not sure a lot of patrons will have played this title. It feels like a history book series like Ultima, where you know of its existence, but one you haven't really played for yourself. And remember, kids, always bring an Ariadne thread when traversing the labyrinth. That's an Etrian Odyssey item, basically like an escape rope from Pokemon to escape the labyrinth. Okay, bye, guys. Thank you, Alt.
Thank you, Alt. And lastly, yeah, we didn't have a lot this time. Unsurprisingly? Unsurprisingly. From Randall, our resident PC shill. And Randall's comment is a GIF from The Godfather, where he is saying, "Look how they massacred my chud."
I don't think that's
with him
the quote.
Saying, "This is this is my actual patron response."
Okay.
No. Actually, that's actually the original quote from the movie. Just so you know.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's one of those Mandela effect things. Okay.
Yeah. Mandela.
It's called Mandalorian, okay?
Yes, this is the Mandalorian effect.
The Mandalorian effect.
Okay, now it's time for our thoughts on whether or not we think this game holds up today. As is tradition, as I want to do, myself and Shane will go first, and we will give the guest the last word before we head out.
Ooh.
So, Shane, does this game hold up today?
I mean, I feel like it's going to be a hard sell no matter what, just because of, kind of what stateside was pointing out earlier in the episode, that it does a really great job of sort of riding that line between very traditional dungeon crawler RPGs like older Wizardry and Ultima and things like that, but introducing a number of, more modern sensibilities, quality of life improvements, etc. So for somebody like me who does enjoy that kind of a game, I do really feel like this is a really excellent entry point for a lot of people if you're ever interested in this style of game. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of too many other titles that would be something that I would suggest you get into, like with having no prior experience, because they can be very dense, very obtuse, and extremely punishing. And I think this one does a pretty good job of balancing a lot of that out while still maintaining a pretty high degree of difficulty, as we mentioned. But I really think it does. Again, that's coming purely from my subjective point of view, where I am definitely skewed more towards this sort of genre than I think a lot of other people might be, which is why I said I think it's going to be a hard sell regardless. But if you were ever interested in trying to find out what, a first person dungeon crawler style game is and what that's like, I can't really think of a better option to kind of get your feet wet than this. So,
okay. I could echo a lot of the things you said. I do think there are better entry points. I think that, just from my personal knowledge of dungeon crawlers, which I don't play a lot of, I think I think in terms of gameplay, a game like Shining the Holy Ark is probably a better game overall. And that also draws a lot from the Wizardry series, obviously, because the dungeon crawlers like Shining in the Darkness. But I will say, after playing some semi-complicated, heavy story-based RPGs and playing a lot of those over the past couple of years, having a game where I don't have to worry about the story, having a game where it's just boiled down to the bare essentials for what you need to do, and then having that addictive, gotta complete every floor of the dungeon type of gameplay that, for me, just kept me going back to it over and over and over again. I found this deeply calming. I found this just relaxing, therapeutic, which is weird considering you're going to get party wiped pretty constantly at some point in this game, no matter who you are. But if you're willing to embrace that, if you're willing to embrace some bullshit difficulty, knowing that you can just, save scum all the time, then I would say yes. I got a lot out of this game. I enjoyed 90% of it. And then when it got to the end of the game, I started kind of trailing off because I don't really know how to grind my party more. And I really want to beat this final boss that I thought I was, within reach of defeating, and it just wasn't the case. I think that was kind of a damper for me. But I can't be like 90% of the game is good, and then I get to the end and I'm starting to get disheartened and say no. I had a lot of fun with this game. There was a time, and it might still hold, that this game was in the running for my personal favorite game of this year, just because it just hit all the right notes for me. But I could very much understand someone getting into this and just being like, this is bullshit. I hate this. I want to put this down. I can definitely see that. But for me, this worked. It worked way more often than it didn't. And I think one of the appealing factors about that is that I knew this game was going to kick me in the junk before I started playing it. And so it didn't take me by surprise when I'm attacking a djinn and he counter punches me with a magic wall up for 200 damage and removes 4 magic points per level on me. I'm like, God damn it. So as long as you know things like that are going to happen, you're going to be fine. And I did. And so, yeah, I do recommend this game, especially if you're looking to see where the foundations of the RPG genre were. This is probably the best entry point for that, because it's just representative of what those old school RPGs were. And a lot of things are going to click and make sense if you are a video game history enthusiast. Well, so those are my thoughts.
Yeah. And
so st1ka, go ahead.
I would say just a quick addendum on mine, because you kind of made me think of it when you were talking about your take on it. And that is, I want to qualify what I said about it being probably the best entry by stating that I would say that is hands down Etrian Odyssey over this game, because I think those games are way more accessible overall than this might be. However, the reason I didn't say that necessarily is because, unfortunately, nowadays this game actually is easier to find and play just by virtue of being on Steam than pretty much any of the Etrian Odyssey titles now. So that's kind of the caveat with that.
They came out with that remaster.
That's true. They did do that. Switch, I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, fuck. All right. Do that. Get the remakes of Etrian Odyssey, because they're really good. And then also maybe this if you liked playing those. There. Okay. That's my take.
Nice. All right. You got the final word, st1ka. Bring us home. Let us know what you think and whether or not this game holds up today.
For me, I think the game holds up today. I would argue it might hold up better today than when it was new, simply because we now have a lot of indie games, and I think we might have a lot more tolerance for games whose graphics may not be the best technically. I know, at least I've always thought that the reviews this game got back when it launched were a little unfair. Maybe the reviewers just weren't used to this sort of game anymore, or they just didn't like the presentation. Whereas today, I think we're a bit more lenient now, as with the rise of indie games or smaller releases. I think this is one of the best entry points for anyone wanting to check out the Wizardry games. It has a lot of UI improvements that the old ones did not have. For example, the simple fact that it draws your map for you. You don't have to go get a pen and paper and draw your own. Although that is also fun as well, if you ask my opinion. But I know that a lot of people just don't have the patience for that. On the other hand, it does feel rather basic. It runs the risk of having the reverse effect on you, where you want to go try it, you see that's too difficult, and it's kind of simple, and it might just turn you off from the series. So I'm always a bit hesitant to recommend this one, even though it's what I usually recommend, as it's the easiest. It's one of the most accessible and truer to the main formula. If what we talked about in this video, in this podcast doesn't entice you, then I would recommend check out Variants Daphne. Yes, it's a mobile game, but it's also on Steam. Yes, it's a gacha game, but it's surprisingly good for what it is. And if neither of those two interest you, then yeah, maybe maybe this series is just not your cup of tea, and that's completely fine.
All right. There you have it. We all think it holds up well, except we know that for many people who don't like getting destroyed, it might not hold up for you. Wizardry,
exactly.
Everybody. It will hurt you. Well, not literally, but it will hurt you. It might hurt your feelings. All right, st1ka, thank you. Thank you so much for stopping by the show. The main show has been a long time coming. I'm just happy to have you on one of these here. Thank you for being part of the King of Games. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been great, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But before we roll out, where can people find you on the internets? Where do you want people to track you down at?
The easiest way to track me down is on YouTube. Simply write my name, st1ka, that is st1ka. And you'll find me. And if you see a spicy thumbnail or a purple wizard, that's me, I assure you.
The spicy purple wizard. You need a spicy purple wizard.
Excellent. And hey, as far as we're concerned, you've already found us, so you've done the hard part. Congratulations. And we hope that you enjoyed your stay with this episode. If this happens to be your first go around with Retro Hangover, then may we suggest the smorgasbord that is our backlog of episodes. There are so many that Apple Podcasts won't even show you all of them anymore. So if you want to go that far back, you can head to our website or perhaps one of the other, RSS feed providers of your choice. Pocket Cast comes up a lot. People like that one. But we've got other things too, we've been around for a bit. So we've got, social media, we've got our Twitch and YouTube channels. And if you like the show enough and you'd like to support it in a perhaps more concrete fashion, we do in fact have a Patreon, as well as our merch store. So all of those goodies can be found in one convenient place, and that is our Linktree. So just head on over to linktr.ee/retro hangover and tap on the button that tickles your fancy, and you will be whisked away to something that is related to us, for better or worse. Chris, what would you like to add, if anything, to my spiel before we wrap this thing up?
Well, just one thing I would add is that if you wanted to watch us play some Wizardry, because we have played Wizardry on our channels, our streaming channels, then hop on over to twitch.tv/retro hangover, where you can see us stream every Sunday at 9 p.m. Well, almost every Sunday. Or you can just watch us from the YouTube channel that we have that you could subscribe to. It's not the best entertainment, but it is entertainment. And so if you have nothing better to do and nothing else to watch, there's definitely something for you there at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And, they're archived. But we have played some Wizardry there, so you can go watch some of that in the backlog over our YouTube channel as well. So hope to see you there.
Yeah, I'm coming around to just referring to us as the best second screen experience on the internet. I think I like that. But anyway, on that ringing endorsement, until next time.
Bye.
Play with your ooh-woo waifu axe welding joysticks.
Ooh-woo?
Ooh-woo.
I could feel the soul draining from you as you said that.
It's okay. We're already dead inside. Shane here with a quick message. The one rule Chris and I have always gone by regarding advertisements is this. It has to be something we use and can personally vouch for. If you know me, you know I love coffee. And Bones Coffee Company has been my go-to for home brewing for quite some time now. Their small batch beans come in an impressive variety of flavors like Mint Invaders from Chocolate Space, or Electric Unicorn, which I swear tastes exactly like Fruity Pebbles. And the best part? No added sugar or calories involved, just natural flavors infused right into the beans themselves. Build your own sample pack of 5 4-ounce bags to find out which flavors speak to you, or jump in head first with full 12-ounce bags. They've even got K-Cups. Step up your homebrew game with Bones Coffee by visiting bit.ly/RHPBones. That's bit.ly/RHPBONES.